They told you knuckle push-ups would give you fists of iron. But here's the shocking truth no one wants to admit. For decades, martial artists, boxers, and basement warriors have been grinding their knuckles into the floor, believing they were forging weapons out of their hands. They were promised tougher bones, calloused skin that could punch through pain, and wrist strength that would make their strikes devastating. The image is iconic. A fighter doing push-ups on their fists, sweat dripping, knuckles pressed against cold concrete, supposedly becoming harder with every rep. But what if most of what you've been told about knuckle push-ups is either wildly exaggerated or completely misunderstood? Let's start with the biggest myth of all. The idea that knuckle push-ups will turn your bones into stone. You've seen the claims everywhere. People swear that by doing hundreds or thousands of reps on your fists, your knuckles will calcify into dense, battle-ready weapons. The theory sounds scientific. It's based on something called Wolff's law, a real principle in bone physiology that states bones adapt to the stresses placed on them. Regular controlled impact does lead to microstresses on the bone tissue, and over time, the body repairs these tiny fractures with new bone material, making the structure denser. This is legitimate science. But here's where it gets interesting. The pressure from knuckle push-ups is nowhere near the impact required to trigger significant bone remodeling. You're not striking anything. You're simply resting your body weight on your fists against a stationary surface. It's isometric, not impact-based. The forces involved are completely different from actual punching or conditioning work, like hitting a heavy bag with bare knuckles. So while some minor adaptation might occur over years of consistent practice, the dramatic bone hardening people expect simply doesn't happen from push-ups alone. The myth has been conflated with actual impact conditioning, and most people never realize the difference. But this is the part most people never hear. The real benefit of knuckle push-ups isn't about hardening your bones at all. It's about your wrists. When you perform a standard push-up, your palms are flat on the floor and your wrists are bent backward into extension. This position creates pressure on the wrist joint, and for many people, especially those with existing wrist issues or those doing high-volume training, this can lead to discomfort or even injury over time. Knuckle push-ups change that equation entirely. By pressing through your fists, your wrists stay in a neutral, aligned position. The joint isn't being forced into extension, which dramatically reduces strain. This is why so many coaches and physical therapists actually recommend knuckle push-ups for people who experience wrist pain during traditional push-ups. It's not about making your hands tougher. It's about protecting your joints. The neutral wrist position also means your forearm muscles work harder to stabilize the movement, which does build real functional strength over time. This is practical, measurable, and often overlooked in favor of the flashier toughness narrative. Here's the twist almost everyone gets wrong. There's another commonly repeated claim that knuckle push-ups build more muscle than regular push-ups. People argue that because you're rebalancing on a smaller surface and your body has to work harder to stabilize, you're getting a better workout overall. This one is partially true, but needs serious context. Research published in the Journal of Electromyography and Kinesiology did find that peak activation of the biceps occurred during knuckle push-ups compared to the standard variation. Additionally, the elevated hand position from being on your fists allows for 2 to 3 extra inches of range of motion at the bottom of the movement. More range means more work for the chest, shoulders, and triceps. That part checks out. However, separate biomechanical analysis found something concerning. The maximum linear and angular acceleration at the elbow joints was actually higher during knuckle push-ups compared to regular push-ups. This means your elbow joints are under more load and potentially at a higher risk of injury if form breaks down or if you're doing extremely high volume without proper conditioning. So yes, you might be getting slightly more muscle activation in some areas, but you're also placing greater stress on other joints in the process. It's a trade-off, not a universal upgrade. Now this is where researchers were stunned. One of the most persistent beliefs in martial arts circles is that knuckle push-ups will toughen the skin on your knuckles, building calluses that protect against cuts and abrasions during striking. This one is actually true, but with important caveats. The repeated pressure against the floor does stimulate callus formation on the skin over the knuckles. Over weeks and months, the area becomes thicker and more resistant to superficial damage. Traditional martial arts instructors have used this method for generations, specifically because it works for conditioning the skin. Karate, kung fu, taekwondo, and boxing training programs have all incorporated this practice for exactly this reason. However, the skin toughening has nothing to do with making your punches harder or more powerful. Calluses don't add force to a strike. They just mean the skin is less likely to split open on impact. The confusion between skin conditioning and bone conditioning has led to wildly inflated expectations about what knuckle push-ups can actually accomplish. There's another layer to this that nobody talks about. Some martial artists and fitness enthusiasts have reported concerns about knuckle deformation and even arthritis from years of doing these push-ups on hard surfaces. The fear is that constant pressure on the metacarpal bones could lead to abnormal bone growth or joint damage over time. The evidence here is mostly anecdotal rather than clinical. There are no large-scale studies definitively linking knuckle push-ups to arthritis. However, the general consensus among experienced practitioners is that progressively building up tolerance and starting on softer surfaces like mats or folded towels is wise. Going straight to concrete floors as a beginner is asking for trouble. The risk is unnecessarily from the exercise itself, but from doing too much too soon without letting the tissues adapt. Here's where it all comes together. The truth about knuckle push-ups is far more nuanced than either the haters or the enthusiasts want to admit. They are not a magic ticket to invincible hands. They won't dramatically harden your bones through some mystical calcification process. They won't make you punch harder just because your knuckles touch the floor. But they do offer legitimate, measurable benefits when performed correctly. The neutral wrist position protects the joint and makes the exercise accessible to people who struggle with standard push-ups. The increased range of motion does provide greater muscle engagement across the chest, shoulders, and arms. The elevated balance challenge does activate more core musculature. And for martial artists specifically, the skin conditioning aspect is a real and practical benefit for striking work. The problem isn't the exercise, it's the mythology surrounding it. The fitness industry and martial arts culture have turned knuckle push-ups into something almost supernatural. Young practitioners see old masters doing them and assume there's a secret power being transmitted through the floor into their fists. The reality is much more grounded. It's simply a push-up variation with specific biomechanical advantages and disadvantages depending on your goals and your body. If you have wrist issues, they might be a better choice for you. If you're a fighter looking to condition the skin on your knuckles, they're part of a broader conditioning protocol. If you want to add variety to your routine and challenge your stability, they're worth incorporating. But if you're expecting to develop indestructible hands from doing sets on your bedroom floor, you're chasing a myth. The best approach is to treat knuckle push-ups as one tool among many. Start on a padded surface if you're new to them. Focus on proper form with your fists directly under your shoulders, core tight, and body in a straight line from head to heels. Do unflare your elbows out wide because that defeats the purpose of the neutral wrist alignment and puts stress on your shoulders instead. Build volume gradually over time. If your goal is actual knuckle conditioning for martial arts, understand that push-ups are just one piece of the puzzle. And controlled bag work with progressive impact is where the real bone adaptation happens. The push-ups prepare the wrists and build general strength. So the next time someone tells you that knuckle push-ups will give you hands like steel, you'll know the real story. The exercise is effective, practical, and worth doing for the right reasons. But those reasons have nothing to do with the superhuman mythology that's been built around it. The truth is simpler and, honestly, more useful. Train smart, train consistently, and understand what each exercise actually does for your body instead of what legends say it should do. What myth should I break down next?